In 1997, Mental Health Foundation produced a booklet called Knowing Our Own Minds, and a very remarkable piece of evidence came out from that, which said that over 50% of the 400 service users who were interviewed said that their religious and spiritual beliefs were important in their in their recovery. And I think this was quite a new discovery for people, that it was such a large amount. We normally think about surveys that say only 20% or 30% of people have a faith, or only 10% of people go to church. But have so many people drawing on religious and spiritual ideas in their recovery was quite new. And what are the sort of things that make a difference? Well, its importance in the guidance and the sense of purpose for people in their recovery. It provides a comforting role. It's also grounding in terms of making sense of the expression of personal pain within some sort of context. And also, very interestingly, it wasn't just about them, it was development of inner love and compassion for other people as well. So we were talking about relationships, fairly early on. There's been a lot of service user research, a lot of it's come out of the Mental Health Foundation. But Peter Gilbert is a particular important researcher and has written a couple of books on this. And so there's a growing amount of research on the use of religious and spirituality in mental health. But it's not just within thank you, Charles. It's not just the service user people, it's also the academics as well. And to give an example from Faith and Mental Health by Harry Koenig, he found that of 100 studies pre to the year 2000, nearly 80% found a statistically significant relationship between greater religious involvement and greater life satisfaction, happiness, and better mood. And following from that, there's been a large amount of research, which you can see up here. These details are on our websites if you want to follow this up. We've now got at least 2 academic journals, the Mental Health and Religion and Culture, but there's also a new journal on spirituality and mental health. And then this research is just growing and growing, and it's not just little bits here and there, it's pulling together. And increasingly what it's showing is that there is an increase in hope and optimism when people engage with their spirituality. A sense of purpose and meaning, increased self-esteem, less depression, fewer suicides, less substance abuse and less psychosis. And this isn't just one-offs, this has been showing over and over again. Why should this be? Well, one of the things that a lot of this research shows, especially I suppose this research should have a health warning. A lot of it is coming from America, where a lot of it is showing the sort of relationships that are going on within religious communities, within the Christian communities. And although this research has been repeated elsewhere across the world, and in Britain and Europe, there is a strong sense that this research is being shown around Christian communities. So belonging to a community, staying connected, is very positive. It helps personal self-perception. And just knowing that you are loved by a higher power or something sacred is a very good coping mechanism. Religions and spirituality also provide resources like rituals and scripture and shared stories, but they also generate positive emotions and love and forgiveness. And it's also, they encourage an outward-looking approach in terms of caring for others and community environment. So it's not just about looking after your own health and your own spirituality, it's about working with other people as well. And this is a quote from Andrew Sims, who is a past president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and who's basically pointing out that if the level of research that had come up with the opposite and said that meant that spirituality and religion was bad for your mental health, we would all know about it. It would be everywhere. The media would be on top of it. But this huge amount of research is not being recognised. Where it is, it's helpful, but on the whole, it's not being recognised. And this should give us some encouragement, so that when we're talking about spirituality and religion in mental health care, we're not just talking about nice things that are morally good. We're actually talking about things that actually work and help. So, what is spirituality? Well, on the basic side of it, it's a focus on the non-material aspects of life. It's going back to what Pat Bracken was talking about in his opening speech about values and meaning in life. It's about the well-being of self as mind, body and spirit, not just as mind or not just as body. It's a relationship with the higher power or the sacred or with God or with however you want to name that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, structured within a religious tradition. Many people feel things that are sacred, even though they're outside of spirituality, and you wouldn't automatically think about them. And there's certainly research in America that shows that people who tend to look on their marriages as sacred are more likely to stay together than people who don't have that feeling about marriage. So spirituality is about bringing meaning and optimism in life. It's a big emphasis on optimism. It's a connection to self, to the others, and the wider world, into our wider ecology. It emphasises values of peace and compassion and happiness. And it also acknowledges that we can have experiences about our bodies that might not be the normal experience that we have in our daily life. I put this slide in because the question always comes up, spirituality and religion, are they the same thing? Are they different? Is there a problem? Sometimes it seems like that spirituality is set up as the opposite of religion, but that's not really the case. I mean, religion is intrinsically spiritual. But spirituality generally covers those practices that were found outside organised religions. They tend to be involved with the individual, whereas when we talk about religion, we tend to talk about the organisations and the communal. Although I'm making a case that we need to bring spirituality and religion into mental health care, not by foisting it onto people, but by finding it within their own strengths. It does have negative features as well, but everything has negative and positive features, and the thing that's been missing in the past has been the positive features, but we do need to acknowledge the negative features. So people can feel persecuted by spirits or guilt or an intolerant deity. There can be challenges about how we react in everyday life. Some organisations can have very unhelpful advice when they're helping people with mental health problems. I seem to come across this again and again where people join a group or a church and they're encouraged to give up their medication and just pray to God and He will sort it all out for you. And there's also quite often people receive a lot of negative criticism that they feel that they ought to be getting well if they believe in God. They're not getting well and they're not claimed that there's a problem. The problem is their faith, and that's often a very difficult thing to feel. The other main point I want to get over to you today is that spirituality and recovery is very much a very similar thing, have very similar goals, and they relate to the whole person. They relate to the idea of illness or religion as a personal journey. And certainly this shift from pathology to self-determination, I think a lot of people have been used to finding that their spiritual beliefs are denigrated by care workers. And what we try to do in our groups is talk about these beliefs as a strength rather than as a weakness. We focus on optimism. And we also acknowledge that faith and spirituality doesn't answer all your problems. It's one of the coping mechanisms that can be drawn on. It's certainly drawing on your own inner strengths that we've worked in our groups, rather than imposing techniques on people. And also one of the other things that comes up, the research shows the adverse effects of health on rampant consumerism and social inequality. And you often find with spirituality and religion that there's quite a bit of criticism about the modern consumer culture. And I think one of the things that we certainly want to think about in the future is how we can move this work to service organisations. So it's not just working with the service users, but service organisations, and how their staff can draw on their own spirituality to help people. So what do we do in our groups? I think when we started this project, like the learning sets, we had a few ideas, but we didn't really know where to go. And we were basing our ideas very much on the sort of assessment tools that some people have written. And we were also doing it with groups that we were kind of promoting, and sort of say, come and join us, come and talk to us. Come and join a group to talk about this. And that didn't really work. But when we turned it round and sort of went out to groups and sort of pre-existing groups of service users and actually brought these ideas to people as a conversation piece, it really took off. So we've got 4 groups at the moment across West Wales where we're talking about spirituality, but not in terms of trying to convince them that they ought to have a religion or take up particular ideas. We have themes. We talk about themes like friendship or hope or stories. And what happens is I talk about that for a few minutes, and then we have a conversation. And these conversations then draw out people what they're talking about and their spiritual ideas. And although we haven't done any evaluation yet, that's kind of the next thing we have to think about. There is beginning to show that some people are finding the idea of talking about their problems from their strength point of view of a spirituality is beginning to show in a few people. So the sort of things that we're doing, we're looking at our beliefs as signs, not as signs of illness, but we're exploring them as strengths in recovery. We're trying to pursue wellness rather than conformity. I think one of the only ground rule we really have is that people respect each other's views and that we don't try and sell our particular religious belief or spiritual belief to the others in the group. And we're harnessing our positive experience of spirituality towards recovery, and we see illness as a spiritual journey. So the simple thing is, start talking to people about their spirituality. They might not have one, they might not be interested. If so, that's okay, but you might be surprised and find that people do have ideas, that they do have beliefs that they can draw on as a terms of a strength. And I think a lot of care workers actually feel embarrassed about talking to people about their spirituality because it's too personal. Well, I don't think you can get too personal if you're trying to help somebody. And there's a quote from somebody in our group who said, just being able to talk about this stuff in a respectful way is brilliant. Normally she was used to people laughing or ridiculing her spiritual ideas, and actually to sit in a group with people who would listen to it and actually ask sensible questions about it, she found that really life-enhancing. So there you go. Get with the Spirit.